Commander Taman stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his eyes fixed on the viewing screen. The planet New Haven floated peacefully below, its green fields and blue oceans visible even from orbit. 50,000 people lived down there. Farmers, teachers, children, families. They had left Earth 20 years ago to build a new home among the stars. Taman had been born on New Haven. His parents still lived in the Southern Valley, growing rice in fields that reminded them of old Korea back on Earth. He was supposed to visit them next month during his leave. His mother had promised to cook his favorite meal. The alarm shattered his thoughts. "Captain Minji?" Hyun's voice cracked from the communications station. The young officer was only 19 years old. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, unknown signatures. They're massive. Captain Minji moved to the center of the bridge, her face calm, but her eyes sharp. She had commanded the Retribution for 5 years and had seen combat before, but something in her expression made Taman's stomach tighten. "How many?" Minji asked. 15 warships, Captain. No, wait, 20. They keep coming." Hyun's fingers flew across his console. "They're not responding to our hails. Captain, they're powering weapons." "Battle stations," Minji said quietly. "Get me Earth Command, now." The Retribution was a patrol ship, designed to watch for pirates and escort cargo vessels. It carried 20 crew members and enough weapons to fight off raiders. The ships appearing on their screens were different. Each one was 10 times larger than the Retribution. Their hulls were dark red, covered in strange symbols that looked like scars cut into metal. "They're called Vakrin," said Lieutenant Yuna from the tactical station. She had pulled up data from the ship's computer. "We met them 2 years ago at the edge of our space. They're an empire. They control 40 star systems." "What do they want?" Taman asked. The answer came in fire. The Vakrin ships opened fire on New Haven without warning. Beams of white energy lanced down from orbit, striking the planet's surface. Taman watched in horror as the southern valley where his parents lived vanished in a flash of light. Then the northern cities, then the coastal towns. "No," he whispered. "All ships, fire at will," Minji shouted, but her voice sounded hollow. They all knew it was useless. The Retribution launched its missiles. They struck one Vakrin ship, barely scratching its shields. In response, 3 Vakrin vessels turned toward them. Minji's hands gripped the command chair. "Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here." "Captain, we can't leave them," Taman shouted, pointing at the planet. "There's no one left to save," Minji said, and her voice broke. "Hyun, are you recording this?" "Yes, Captain. Everything." "Good. Make sure it reaches Earth. Make sure they see what happened here." The Retribution fled as New Haven died behind them. The planet that had taken 20 years to build was destroyed in 20 minutes. When the Vakrin finished, there was nothing left but burning rock and ash. Not a single person survived. Not Taman's parents. Not the children in their schools. Not anyone. The Vakrin ship stayed in orbit for an hour. Then they broadcast a message on all frequencies. Taman would never forget the voice. It sounded like grinding metal, translated by the ship's computer into words he could understand. "Humans, you are weak. You are alone in this part of space. We are the Vakrin Empire. We claim your outer territories. You will leave these systems within 30 days. You will also send tribute, food, technology, ships. If you refuse, more of your colonies will burn like this one." The message repeated 3 times. Then the Vakrin fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. The bridge of the Retribution was silent. Hyun was crying quietly at his station. Lieutenant Yuna stared at her screen, her face pale. Captain Minji stood like a statue, her jaw clenched so tight that Taman could see the muscles in her neck. "Set course for Earth," Minji finally said. "Maximum speed." The journey took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of watching the recording over and over. 3 weeks of trying to process that 50,000 people had been murdered without warning or reason. When they reached Earth, they found chaos. News of New Haven had already arrived. The outer colonies were in panic. Some were evacuating, others were arming themselves. The Galactic Assembly, a council of alien species that governed this region of space, had sent messages of sympathy but offered no help. "We cannot interfere in territorial disputes," said the Assembly's statement. "The Vakrin Empire has legitimate claims to expansion." Taman read those words and felt rage burn through him like fire. Captain Minji was called to Earth Command immediately. Taman went with her. They walked through corridors filled with officers moving with urgent purpose. They entered a massive briefing room where hundreds of military personnel were gathered. At the front of the room stood Admiral Dong Min. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and scars on his face from the colony wars 30 years ago. He had a reputation. When he spoke, people listened. When he fought, people died. "The Vakrin gave us 30 days to respond," Admiral Dong Min said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "They expect us to run. They expect us to beg. They think we're weak because we're new to this part of space. They think we'll trade our freedom for our lives." He paused and looked around the room. "They're wrong." A screen behind him lit up, showing a map of space. Red markers showed Vakrin territory. Blue markers showed human space. There were 50 blue markers. Each one was a colony. Each one had people, families, children. "For 200 years we've been preparing for this," Dongmin continued. "For 200 years we've built weapons and trained soldiers and designed ships, not because we wanted war, but because we knew someday someone would try to take what's ours." More screens activated. They showed ships. Thousands of ships. More ships than Taman had ever imagined existed. Carriers and destroyers and cruisers and fighters. And behind them, in massive orbital yards, even larger vessels under construction. "The Vakrin wanted our attention," Admiral Dongmin said. "Now they have it." He pressed a button on his console. Across Earth, across the Moon, across Mars and the asteroid belt and the outer stations, 50 military fleets activated. Ships that had been waiting in silence powered up their engines. Weapons that had been stored for decades were loaded and armed. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war that might never come put on their armor and boarded their transports. "We will not negotiate," Dongmin said. "We will not surrender. We will not run. The Vakrin burned 50,000 of our people. They wanted to teach us fear. Instead, they've taught us something else." He looked directly at the camera broadcasting his words to every human ship, station, and colony in space. "They've taught us that mercy is a gift, and they don't deserve it." Taman watched as the fleets began to move. Thousands of ships, all heading in the same direction, toward Vakrin space, toward war. Captain Minji stood beside him. "What do you think will happen?" she asked quietly. Taman thought of his parents. He thought of their farm in the Southern Valley. He thought of 50,000 voices that would never speak again. "I think," he said, "the Vakrin are about to learn what happens when you make humanity angry." The Earth had sent its answer, not in words, in warriors. The Vakrin Empire celebrated. In their capital city on Vakros Prime, the military commanders gathered in the Great Hall to drink and boast about their easy victory. They had destroyed a human colony with barely any effort. The humans had run away. Surely they would surrender soon and accept their place as subjects of the Empire. General Throck, commander of the fleet that had burned New Haven, raised his glass. "To the weakness of humans!" he shouted, and his officers cheered. They did not know that their celebration was being watched. High above their planet, invisible to their sensors, a human stealth probe recorded everything. It transmitted the data across space using quantum communications that no one could intercept. The message reached Earth Command in seconds. Admiral Dongmin watched the Vakrin celebration on his screen. His face showed no emotion. Beside him, Dr. Sora adjusted her glasses and made notes on her tablet. She was the head of Earth's weapons development program, and she had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. "They're arrogant," she said. "That's good for us." "How long until the fleets are ready?" Dongmin asked. "The main battle groups are already moving. The special weapons will be ready in 1 week." Dongmin nodded. He opened a communication channel that connected to every ship in the human fleet. Thousands of captains and crew members waited for his words. "This is Admiral Dongmin. Our orders are simple. The Vakran Empire believes they can murder our people without consequence. We will show them they're wrong. We will not accept their surrender until they've paid for what they've done. We will not stop until justice is served. Begin Operation Reckoning." Across human space, the fleets moved out. But they didn't move in one large group that the Vakran could see and track. Instead, they separated into dozens of smaller groups, each with a specific target. Some headed for Vakran supply lines. Others moved toward their military bases. The largest groups positioned themselves at the edge of Vakran space, waiting. Captain Minji now commanded not just the Retribution, but an entire battle group of 20 ships. They were assigned to patrol the Kessler Junction, a strategic point where 3 hyperspace lanes met. Intelligence said the Vakran used this route to move supplies and troops. Taman had been promoted to executive officer, second in command of the battle group. He stood on the bridge of their new flagship, the Damascus. It was much larger than the Retribution, with more weapons and stronger shields, but it was still just one ship. "Captain, we have 3 Vakran warships approaching," reported Lieutenant Yuna. She had transferred to the Damascus with them. "They're the same class that destroyed New Haven." Minji's face hardened. "Battle stations. Do not fire until I give the order." The 3 Vakran ships came out of hyperspace and immediately detected the Damascus. They moved into attack formation, confident. After all, they were 3 ships against 1. They had destroyed an entire planet. What was 1 human vessel? "They're hailing us," Hyun said from communications. "They're demanding we surrender." "Respond," Minji said calmly. "Tell them we respectfully decline." Taman watched the tactical display. The Vakran ships were spreading out, trying to surround them. It was a standard tactic: attack from multiple angles and overwhelm the target. It had worked for the Vakran for hundreds of years against dozens of species. "Captain, they're powering weapons," Yuna reported. "Wait," Minji said. The first Vakran ship fired. Its energy beam struck the Damascus's shields, which flickered but held. The Vakran had expected the shields to fail. They hesitated, confused. "Now," Minji said quietly. The Damascus responded with weapons the Vakran had never seen before. Railguns fired projectiles at a fraction of light speed. They punched through the first Vakran ship's shields like they were paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. The second Vakran ship tried to run, but the Damascus launched missiles that split into smaller missiles, then split again. Hundreds of warheads swarmed the Vakran vessel, overwhelming its defenses. It died in seconds. The third ship managed to get off a distress signal before the Damascus's main cannon fired. The beam of concentrated energy cut the Vakran ship in half. Total time, 8 minutes. 3 Vakran ships destroyed. The Damascus had suffered only minor shield damage. On the bridge, no one cheered. They had won, but there was no joy in it. They were just beginning to pay back a debt written in the blood of 50,000 people. "Send the combat data to Earth Command," Minji ordered. "Let them know the weapons work as designed." Across Vakran space, similar scenes played out. Human ships appeared where the Vakran thought they were safe. They struck hard and fast, then disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Within a week, the Vakran had lost 50 ships. They had destroyed none. In the Vakran capital, the celebration had turned to concern. General Throck was called before the Emperor. "You said the humans were weak," the Emperor hissed. "You said they would surrender." "They are weak, my lord. We just need more ships, more troops. They got lucky. 50 ships destroyed is not luck, the Emperor roared. Find out what's happening. Stop them. But the Vakrin couldn't stop what they couldn't understand. Humans didn't fight like other species. There were no grand battles between fleets, no honorable single combat between warriors. The humans struck from stealth, targeted supply lines, and used tactics the Vakrin had never encountered. Sergeant Jiho led a team of Void Recon soldiers, the most elite fighters humanity had. They wore armor that could survive in the vacuum of space. They carried weapons designed for close combat on enemy ships. Their mission was to board Vakrin vessels and gather intelligence. Jiho's team approached a Vakrin transport ship in the dead of night. Well, there was no night in space, but that didn't matter. They moved silently through the void, their armor absorbing sensor scans. They cut through the hull and entered the ship. Inside, they moved like ghosts. The Vakrin crew never knew they were there until it was too late. Jiho's team didn't kill everyone. They only neutralized the guards. Then they downloaded the ship's computers and left, sealing the hull behind them. The whole operation took 12 minutes. The intelligence they gathered was sent to Wu Jin, a specialist who could break any computer system. He analyzed the Vakrin data and found something interesting. The Vakrin had a central command network that controlled all their ships, and it had a weakness. I can get inside their system, Wu Jin told Admiral Dongmin. I can feed them false information. Make them think we're attacking from one direction while we hit them from another. Do it, Dongmin said. The Vakrin military started receiving reports that were completely false. They thought human fleets were in systems where there were no humans at all. They sent their ships to defend empty space while real human forces attacked their actual positions. After 2 weeks of this, the Vakrin Emperor realized they were losing. Badly. He sent a message to Earth, broadcast on all channels. We wish to negotiate, the message said. There has been a misunderstanding. We can discuss terms. We can share territory. Please, let us talk. The message reached Admiral Dongmin while he was reviewing battle reports. He read it once, then deleted it. Respond, he told his communications officer. Tell them negotiations are denied. What should I say the reason is, sir? Dongmin thought of New Haven. He thought of 50,000 people who had been given no chance to negotiate, no opportunity to surrender, no mercy at all. Tell them they had their chance to talk. They chose to burn our children instead. Now they get to see what happens next. The Vakrin sent more messages. Each one was more desperate than the last. They offered technology. They offered territory. They offered wealth beyond measure. Each message was ignored. Captain Minji's battle group moved deeper into Vakrin space. They were no longer just defending. They were hunting. Other human fleets did the same, moving like a tightening noose around the Vakrin Empire. They keep sending peace delegations, Taemin said to Minji one night. Should we at least listen? Minji looked at him with cold eyes. Did they listen when New Haven begged? Did they show mercy to children, to families? Taemin shook his head. Then we keep going, Minji said, until they understand what they've done, until they face justice. The human fleets continued their advance. The Vakrin Empire, which had stood for 1,000 years, began to crumble. Their military couldn't stop the humans. Their allies abandoned them. Their people began to panic. And still, Earth's warriors came. Lieutenant Yuna sat in the cockpit of her fighter, the Ghost. It was small, fast, and invisible to almost every sensor in known space. She had painted a small flower on the side, a reminder of her grandmother's garden back on Earth. Next to the flower, she had painted 50 small marks. One for every 1,000 people who died on New Haven. Tonight she was hunting deep in Vakrin territory, far from any backup. Her mission was simple. find the enemy supply depot, and mark it for destruction. It was dangerous work. If the Vakrin detected her, she would be too far away for anyone to help. But Yuna had volunteered anyway. She drifted past a Vakrin patrol without being seen. Her ship's stealth systems made it look like empty space on their sensors. Through her canopy, she could see the massive supply station ahead. It was the size of a small moon, filled with weapons, food, and fuel for the Vakrin war machine. Yuna activated her targeting system and painted the station with an invisible laser. Far behind her, waiting at the edge of the system, 3 human destroyers received the signal. They fired missiles that would arrive in exactly 10 minutes. "Target marked," Yuna whispered into her radio. "Coming home." She turned her fighter around and began the long flight back. Behind her, right on schedule, the missiles arrived. The Vakrin supply station exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Yuna didn't look back. She had 3 more targets to hit tonight. This was how the humans fought, not with massive fleets facing each other in open battle. They struck from the shadows. They hit the enemy where it hurt most: supply lines, command centers, communication hubs. One by one, they dismantled the Vakrin Empire from within. Wu Jin worked in a dark room filled with computer screens. His eyes were tired from staring at code for 16 hours straight, but he couldn't stop. He had found a way into the Vakrin military network, and now he was doing something that would make the enemy very angry. He wasn't just stealing information. He was changing it. When Vakrin ships tried to navigate through hyperspace, his modified code sent them to the wrong locations. When Vakrin commanders tried to communicate with their fleets, his interference garbled the messages. When Vakrin weapon systems powered up, his viruses made them shut down at random moments. "How's it going?" asked Dr. Sora, who had come to check on his progress. "They're going crazy," Wu Jin said with a tired smile. "They don't know which orders are real and which are fake. They don't trust their own computers anymore. Some of their ships are refusing to jump to hyperspace because they're afraid of ending up in a star." "Good," Dr. Sora said. "Keep it up." The Vakrin Empire was indeed going crazy. Their military leaders screamed at their technicians. Their technicians couldn't explain what was happening. Their ships were turning against them. Their systems were failing, and they couldn't find the source of the problem. Some Vakrin officers thought it was sabotage from within. They started arresting their own people, suspecting traitors. This made things worse. The Empire began to tear itself apart from paranoia and fear. Meanwhile, Sergeant Jiho and his Void Recon team prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. They were going to board a Vakrin flagship and capture the location of the enemy high command. Intelligence said the flagship, named Destroyer of Hope, was heavily guarded with triple the normal crew. It would be almost impossible to infiltrate. "Almost impossible is good enough for me," Jiho said to his team. "We've done impossible before." His team consisted of 8 soldiers. Each one was a specialist. Nari was their demolitions expert. Minho was their medic. The others were trained in combat, hacking, and infiltration. They had worked together for 5 years and trusted each other completely. They approached the Destroyer of Hope in a small stealth pod. It looked like space debris, just another piece of junk floating through the void. The Vakrin sensors ignored it. The pod drifted close to the flagship's hull and attached itself with magnetic clamps. "We're on," Jiho whispered. "Radio silence from here." They cut through the hull, using a plasma torch that made almost no sound. Once inside, they moved through the ship's maintenance corridors, avoiding the main hallways where Vakrin crew members walked. The ship was huge, with over 2,000 Vakrin aboard. But the Void Recon team knew exactly where to go. Wu Jin had provided them with the ship's complete layout and the location of the main computer core. They reached it without being detected. Nari placed a small device on the computer that would download everything while they waited. It took 5 minutes. 5 very long minutes where any Vakrin could have walked in and found them. But luck was with them. The download completed, and Jiho signaled for retreat. They were almost back to their entry point when alarms started blaring. Someone had found the device they'd left behind. The entire ship went into lockdown. Plan B, Jiho said calmly. Plan B was simple: fight their way out. The Void Recon team wasn't designed for stealth alone. They were also some of the deadliest soldiers humanity had ever trained. When Vakrin guards rushed toward them, they met weapons that fired rounds designed to penetrate alien armor. The guards fell before they could even raise their own weapons. More guards came. The team moved as one unit, covering each other, advancing through the ship toward their escape pod. Nari threw explosives behind them to slow the pursuit. Minho treated anyone who got injured. They left a trail of chaos in their wake. When they reached their pod, half the ship's security was chasing them. Jiho was the last one in. He sealed the door and hit the release button. The pod detached from the flagship and boosted away at maximum speed. Vakrin fighters launched to pursue them, but a human destroyer appeared from stealth and destroyed the fighters with precise shots. The pod was recovered, and Jiho's team was safe. "Did you get it?" Admiral Dongmin asked when the data reached him. "Yes, sir," Jiho reported. "Complete location of their high command and something else. Evidence that New Haven wasn't their first atrocity." Dongmin's face went dark. "Explain." "They've been doing this for decades. 17 other primitive species. They found them, attacked them without warning, and wiped them out. All of them. New Haven was just the latest." Dongmin was silent for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change everything. "Send this information to the Galactic Assembly. Let them see what the Vakrin really are, and prepare all fleets for the final operation." The Galactic Assembly received the evidence and went into emergency session. The alien species that made up the Assembly had ignored Earth's pleas for help, saying it was just a territorial dispute. But this evidence proved the Vakrin were not conquerors. They were genocidal murderers who had destroyed 17 entire species. The Assembly issued a statement condemning the Vakrin Empire, but they still refused to take action. Politics and fear of the Vakrin made them cowards. "We don't need their help," Dongmin said when he heard this. "We never did." The human fleets converged on a single target: Vakros Prime, the Vakrin homeworld. 50 battle groups, thousands of ships, all moving toward the heart of the enemy empire. The Vakrin detected them coming and panicked. The Emperor sent another message to Earth. This time his voice was desperate, almost begging. "Please, we can negotiate. We will give you anything: territory, wealth, technology. We will leave your space forever. Just stop. Please stop." The message played on the bridge of Admiral Dongmin's flagship. Every officer heard it. They heard the fear in the Emperor's voice. They heard him beg. Dongmin's response was broadcast not just to the Vakrin, but to every ship in both fleets, and to the entire Galactic Assembly. He wanted everyone to hear his words. "You begged for mercy," Dongmin said, his voice cold and clear. "But the Earth sent its warriors. You showed no mercy to 50,000 innocent people on New Haven. You showed no mercy to 17 other species you exterminated. You wanted to teach us fear. Instead, you've taught us that mercy must be earned. And you have not earned it." He paused, then continued. "The siege of Vakros Prime begins now. You will surrender unconditionally, or you will face the consequences of your crimes. You have 24 hours to decide." The human fleets surrounded the Vakrin homeworld. The planet hung in space, blue and green, home to billions of Vakrin. And around it, humanity's warriors waited in silence. The hunt was over. Now came the judgment. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Commander Taman stood on a hill overlooking a valley. The valley where his parents had lived. The valley that had been destroyed by Vakrin fire. But now, it was green again. Thousands of people worked in the fields below, planting crops and building homes. New Haven was being rebuilt. Not as it was before, but as something new, something stronger. The 50,000 who had died would never be forgotten. Their names were carved into a massive black stone monument at the center of the colony. Taman had accepted a new role. He was no longer just a military officer. He was the administrator of New Haven, responsible for its reconstruction. It was hard work, but important. Every day, survivors from Earth arrived to build new lives here. Every day, the colony grew. "It's beautiful," said a voice behind him. Taman turned to see Captain Minji. She had retired from active military service but visited often. She looked different now, wearing civilian clothes instead of her uniform. More relaxed, almost at peace. "Thank you for coming," Taman said. "I wanted you to see this." They walked together to the monument. 50,000 names covered the black stone. At the top, carved in large letters, were the words that had become humanity's rallying cry during the war. They begged for mercy, but the Earth sent its warriors. Below that, in smaller letters, someone had added, "So that mercy would never be needed again." "Who added that last part?" Minji asked. "I did," Taman admitted. "The war is over, but its lesson remains. We can be merciful now because we showed we could be warriors when necessary." Minji nodded. The galaxy learned that lesson too. She was right. The war had changed everything. Before the Vakrin attacked New Haven, humanity had been just another species trying to find its place among the stars. Now, Earth was recognized as one of the major powers in the galaxy. Other species respected humanity's strength and feared it. Admiral Dongmin had become Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. It was a strange transition from military commander to diplomat, but he was good at it. His reputation made other species listen when he spoke. His wisdom helped prevent conflicts before they started. In his office at the Assembly headquarters, Dongmin reviewed reports from across human space. The news was mostly good. The economy was growing. New colonies were being established. Scientific discoveries were being made every day. But he also watched the military reports carefully. Peace was good, but humanity would never again be caught unprepared. "Ambassador, you have visitors," his assistant announced. 3 young Vakrin entered his office. They were students from the new academy on Vakros Prime, where young Vakrin learned about diplomacy and peace instead of war and conquest. They looked nervous. "Ambassador Dongmin," the leader said, bowing respectfully. "We wanted to thank you." Dongmin raised an eyebrow. "Thank me? For what?" "For stopping our empire," the student said. "We learned in school about the 17 species our ancestors destroyed, about New Haven, about all the evil our leaders did. If you hadn't stopped them, they would have continued. They would have made us all guilty of genocide." Another student spoke up. "Our parents are ashamed of what the old empire did. But they say you gave us a chance to be better. You could have destroyed our whole world, but you didn't. You punished the guilty and protected the innocent. That's real justice." Dongmin felt something unexpected: hope. These young Vakrin represented a new generation, one that had learned from the past instead of repeating it. "Tell your parents," Dongmin said gently, "that every species makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. Your generation has a chance to build something better than the empire. Don't waste it." The students bowed again and left. Dongmin sat back in his chair, thinking. Maybe the war had been worth it after all. Across the galaxy, other changes were happening. Dr. Sora had shifted her research from weapons to peaceful technology. Her team was developing new engines that could cross the galaxy faster than ever before. New medical technology that could cure diseases, new farming techniques that could feed billions. "We built weapons because we had to," she explained to a journalist. but now we can build wonders instead. Still, her weapons division remained active. The arsenal that had defeated the Vakrin was maintained and improved. Earth's military stayed strong and ready. The lesson of New Haven was clear: hope for peace, but prepare for war. Sergeant Jiho and his Void Recon team had become legends. Stories of their missions spread through both human and alien societies. Young soldiers wanted to join the Void Recon units. Alien military leaders studied their tactics. Jiho himself had been promoted to colonel and now trained the next generation of warriors. "What's the most important lesson you teach them?" a reporter asked him once. Jiho thought for a moment. "That strength without mercy makes you a monster, but mercy without strength makes you a victim. You need both." Lieutenant Yuna had become one of humanity's most famous pilots. The battle where she held off 20 Vakrin ships was taught in every military academy. She could have retired with full honors, but she chose to keep flying. She said the stars were her home now. Wu Jin continued his work with computer systems, but now he focused on defense instead of offense. He built security systems that protected human networks from any attack. He also helped other species improve their technology, teaching them the tricks he had learned during the war. Nari, the demolitions expert from Jiho's team, had surprised everyone by becoming a teacher. She taught engineering at the rebuilt New Haven Academy, showing students how to build instead of destroy. Many of her students were children of colonists who had died in the original attack. She felt it was her duty to help them build a future. Hyun, the young communications officer who had been only 19 during the attack on New Haven, was now a senior diplomat. His experience during the war had taught him the importance of clear communication between species. He worked to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. The Galactic Assembly had changed too. Before the war, they had been weak and divided, unwilling to confront evil. Now they had stronger rules and better enforcement. When a new species tried to conquer its neighbors, the Assembly acted quickly to stop them. They had learned from their failure to help Earth. The old Vakrin territory was now divided into 12 independent sectors, each governed by councils that included both Vakrin and humans. It wasn't always easy. There was tension, resentment. Some Vakrin still believed their empire had been great. Some humans still wanted revenge. But slowly things improved. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges happened. Young Vakrin and humans studied together, worked together, and sometimes even became friends. The wounds of war began to heal, though the scars would never disappear. On the anniversary of New Haven's destruction, people across human space observed a moment of silence. In homes and ships and stations, humans paused to remember. In the New Haven colony, thousands gathered at the monument. Taemin stood before the crowd and spoke. "Today we remember 50,000 people who died for no reason except cruelty and arrogance. We remember that they were farmers and teachers and parents and children. They were us. And we honor them not just with monuments and silence, but with our actions." He gestured to the rebuilt colony around them. "We honor them by building something better than what was destroyed, by refusing to let fear control us, by being strong enough to protect the innocent and wise enough to show mercy when it's deserved." The crowd was silent, listening. "The Vakrin thought they could break us," Taemin continued. "They thought one attack would make us run. Instead, they woke something in humanity that had been sleeping. They reminded us why we left Earth in the first place, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect our right to exist, to thrive, to reach for the stars." He paused and looked up at the sky, where the monument's inscription was visible. "They begged for mercy, but the Earth sent its warriors, and those warriors did their job. Now we can be at peace again. But we will never forget the price of that peace. We will never again be unprepared, and we will never stop being humanity." The crowd began to applaud. slowly at first, then louder. It wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement, understanding, agreement. As the ceremony ended and people dispersed, Taman stood alone at the monument for a while longer. He touched his parents' names, carved into the stone among 49,998 others. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "You're not forgotten. None of you are forgotten." A hand touched his shoulder. Captain Minji stood beside him, along with Admiral Dong Min, Dr. Sora, Lieutenant Yuna, Sergeant Jiho, and the others who had fought to avenge New Haven. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They all understood. They had been warriors when humanity needed warriors. They had been ruthless when mercy would have meant more death. They had done what was necessary, no matter how hard it was. And now they could finally rest. In orbit above New Haven, the human fleet maintained its eternal watch. Ships stood ready to defend the colony, the system, humanity itself. They were peaceful now, but every captain and crew member knew they could become warriors again in seconds if needed. That was humanity's new place in the galaxy. Peaceful explorers who dreamed of discovering wonders among the stars, but also warriors who would never hesitate to protect their own. The other species knew this. Some feared it, some respected it, all understood it. The Vakran had taught humanity an important lesson, though they had paid a terrible price for it. They had taught them that mercy was a gift, not a weakness, that peace required the capacity for war, that sometimes the only way to stop evil was to confront it with overwhelming force, and humanity had learned that lesson well. As the sun set over New Haven's valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, the colony's lights began to glow. 50,000 people had died here, but now 50,000 new lives were being built. The cycle of destruction had been broken by warriors who refused to accept injustice. The galaxy was safer because of them. Not perfect, not without problems, but safer. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity's warriors remained vigilant, ready to defend the innocent, ready to seek justice, ready to remind anyone who forgot, Earth protects its own.